He was the worst possible witness in the world. Crafty was, to put it very crudely, the master of all that ticked and tocked. He was a scholar, a historian, a connoisseur. I, in comparison, was a well-educated mechanic. Crofty was famous for his scholarly work on sing-songs, by which is meant those perfect imperial misunderstandings of Oriental culture we so successfully exported to China in the 18th century. Highly elaborate music boxes encased in the most fanciful compositions of exotic beasts and buildings, often placed on elaborate stands. That was what it was like for members of our caste. We built our teetering lives on this sort of thing. The beasts moved their eyes, ears and tails. Pagodas rose and fell, jewelled stars spun, and revolving glass rods provided a very credible impression of order. I bawled and bawled, and now I was the one whose mouth became a sock puppet. There's a word coming up I can never pronounce. It's the name of a small dog. I'm just going to... I can't do it. I don't know why. Like the large chair... like a large chairman of a rugger club who has a chihuahua for a pet. That's enough. Eric did not at all resemble his sing-songs, which one might expect to be the passion of a slim, fastidious homosexual. Eric had a sort of hetero gung-ho quality which metals people are expected to have. No, he said. Hush! Hush! He was not rough with me, but he got his big hard arm around my shoulder and compelled me into a fume cupboard, and then turned on the extractor fan, which roared like 20 hairdryers all at once. I thought, I've let the cat out of the bag. No, he said, don't. The cupboard was awfully small, built solely so that one conservator might clean an object with toxic solvent. He was stroking my shoulder as if I were a horse. We will look after you, he said. In the midst of bawling, I finally understood that Crofty knew my secret. Go home for now, he said quietly. I thought, I've betrayed us. I thought, Matthew will be pissed. Meet me at the Greasy Spoon, he said. 10 o'clock tomorrow? Could you manage that? Across the road from the annex? Do you think you could do that? Well, do you mind? Yes, I said, thinking, so that's it. They're going to kick me out of the main museum. They're going to lock me in the annex. I'd spilled the beans. Good. He beamed, and the creases around his mouth gave him a rather cat-like appearance. He turned off the extractor fan, and suddenly I could smell his aftershave. First, we'll get you sick leave, he said. We'll get through this together. I've got something for you to sort out. He said, a really lovely object. That's how people talk at the Swinburne. They say object instead of clock. I thought, he is exiling me, burying me. The annex was situated behind Olympia, where my grief might be as private as my love. But he was being kind to me, strange macho Crofty. I kissed him on his rough, sandalwood-smelling cheek. We both looked at each other with astonishment, and then I fled out onto the humid street, pounding down towards the Albert Hall, with Matthew's lovely, silly hat crushed inside my hand. I arrived home still not knowing how my darling died. I imagined he had fallen, he had hit his head. I hated how he always tipped back on his chair. And now there would be a funeral. I tore my shirt in half and ripped the sleeves away. All night I imagined how he had died, been run over, squashed, knifed, pushed onto the tracks. Each vision was a shock, a rip, a cry. And I was in this same condition 14 hours later when I arrived at Olympia to meet with Eric. No one loves Olympia. It is a hateful place. But this was where the Swinburne Annex was, so this was where I would be sent, as if I was a widow and must be burned alive. Well, light the leaves and firewood, I thought, because nothing could hurt more than this. The footpaths beside the exhibition centre were unnaturally hot and narrow. The lanes were looped and dog-legged. Lethal high-speed vans lifted the dust and distributed the fag ends up and down the street where the annex awaited. It was not a prison. A prison would have had a sign, but its high front gates were festooned with razor wire. Many of the Swinburne's conservatives had spent a season in the annex, working on an object whose restoration could not be properly undertaken at the main museum. Some claimed to have enjoyed their stay, but how could I be severed from my Swinburne, my museum, my life, where every stairway and lowly hallway, every flake of plaster, every molecule of acetone contained my love for Matthew? Opposite the annex, I found George's Cafe, with its doors wide open to the freakish heat. Now you would think that the author of Balance of Payments, the sing-song trade with China in the 18th century, would be clearly distinguishable from the 4 sweaty policemen at the back booth, the drivers from Olympia, and the postal workers from the West Kensington delivery office who, it seems, had been given permission to wear shorts. Not a good idea. But never mind. If the distinguished curator had not risen awkwardly, for the plywood booths did not encourage large men to make this sort of motion, I might not have picked him out at all. Crofty liked to say that he was a perfect no one. Yet, although he was so opaquely estuary, and his bone-crushing handshake had roots somewhere in the years of his birth in the manly 1950s, he might turn up to drinks for the Minister for Arts, where you, if you were lucky enough to be invited, might learn that he had been to Scotland hunting with Ellsworth, Sir Ellis Crispin to you, on the previous weekend. It appeared that I was now to be protected by this powerful man. I saw his eyes, all the frightening sympathy. I fussed with my umbrella and placed a notebook on the table, but he covered my hand with his own. It was large and dry and warm, like something you would hatch eggs in. "What a horror it all is," he said. "Tell me, please, Eric, what happened?" "Oh, Christ. Of course, you don't know." I couldn't look at him. I rescued my hand and hid it in my lap. "Heart attack," he said. "Big one, so sorry." On the tube. The tube, I had seen the tube all night, the dark, hot violence of it. I snatched the menu and ordered baked beans and 2 poached eggs. I could feel Eric watching me with his soft, wet eyes. They were no help at all. I rearranged my cutlery violently. "They got him off at Notting Hill," he said. I thought he was going to say that this was good, to die so close to home, but he didn't. I could not bear the thought that they had taken him back to her. And she, that great designer of marital understanding, would now play the grieving widow. "I suppose it's Kensal Green," I said. "The funeral?" And I thought, just up the Harrow Road. So handy. "Tomorrow, actually," he said. "No, Eric, that's totally impossible." "Oh, tomorrow at 3. Now he could not look at me. "I don't know what you wish to do," he said. Of course, they would all be there, his wife, his sons, his colleagues. I would be expected to go, but I could not. I would give everything away. "No one gets buried that quickly," I said. "She's trying to hide something." I thought, "She wants him in the ground, away from me." No, I'll love nothing like that. Not even the awful Margaret is capable of that. "Well, have you ever tried to book a funeral? It took me 2 weeks to get my father buried." "In this case," he said, "they had a cancellation."